Welcome to the Samson Strength Coach Collective. On today's episode, we have Tyler Janota, head of men's basketball sports performance at Northern Kentucky University. Tyler and I, it's been interesting because I've always heard of Tyler throughout my career. We've been connected through different areas without ever actually getting to meet each other. And so it was really cool for him and I to speak with each other and, actually get to know each other a little bit, even though it's been from afar, which I'm sure a lot of strength coaches can relate to. I think this conversation was awesome, especially from a conversational standpoint. I don't know if we got to a single question I had planned. It was just us having a conversation, and he helped me understand a couple things about my program better. So I hope he does the same for you. I loved our conversation, and I hope you feel the same. And as always, thank you for listening. Hello, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners. On today's episode, we have Tyler Janota. He is head of men's basketball sports performance at Northern Kentucky University. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Absolutely glad to be here, man.
Oh yeah, we were talking as in basketball. Everybody connected via different positions, via different people, and we were. He actually texted me. There's a different position that we were both connected via, and so these things are really interesting to me, and it's always fun to kind of catch up with people who I know of in the field, but I've never actually gotten to have a full conversation with. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, man, me too. I have heard your name and I've obviously seen the podcast and all that stuff. So it's actually talking about you weeks before you even hit me up. So it's funny how it all works
There
out.
you go.
Yeah.
It's a small field. Everybody knows each other somehow. So, well, why don't we start it off? Just kind of give me your background in strength and conditioning, and then what's led you to your current position.
Sure. Yeah, I started I played small college football in Northwestern Iowa at Northwestern College. It's an NAIA program up there. And I started going to college thinking I wanted to be a history teacher and a high school football coach, just because the kind of the most impactful person in my life up until that point was my high school offensive line coach, powerlifting coach, and history teacher, just because you got to do something when you're coaching football. And so I thought that was kind of my path, and I took one history class in college, and I thought that's not going to work. Kind of thought I wanted to be an agent, and I realized I don't have the guts for that. That wasn't really my thing. Started a sports administration major my sophomore year, my redshirt freshman year, and then we added a strength coach, a full-time strength coach, my second year at college. His name's Kyle Oxner. He was coming from Minnesota, worked for a guy named Cal Dietz.
Yep.
Um, and so my first introduction to really scheduled and periodized training was triphasic training. And so it wasn't just, obviously it was a little linear before that with kind of a student assistant or a senior on the football team kind of running us through it. But I got into actually feeling good when I trained, actually thinking there's a process, actually thinking like, if we work on things, we plan things, and we move things forward, that you will feel better and move better. And I had a really good small college football career. We won a lot of games, a lot of playoff appearances, and earned some all conference honors and captain and all things like that. And I contributed a lot of that to training and just how, like, if you work on something and you think about it enough, it actually reaps some type of benefit. And that was kind of my limited exposure. I powerlifted in high school, and coming back, like I can't even think of what we did in high school to get strong. I don't even remember. I know 16 years old, lifting, going home, putting 2 cups of whole milk and muscle milk right when it first came out, shaking it up, taking a nap, going and lifting again. And I got really strong because we'll just adapt to anything when we're that age. And I thought that was really cool. And so actually knowing what the process was a big thing. And so then I said, I want to be a strength coach. And I went to my academic advisor, Dean Callsbeek in Northwestern College, and I said, I want to be this. And he said, well, you're going to need to probably get a master's degree and go be a GA. And looking at your grades, I don't think you can do that. And I said, oh. And he said, it's going to be really hard. And he said, if you get a job, it's not going to pay much. And you're going to have to take chemistry concurrent with biomechanics by arrangement and all these things. And I looked him in the eye as a 20-year-old and said, sure, sounds great. So from that point on, I really started to think like I can actually make a career out of this. It's what I wanted to do. And at that point, I thought it was football, right? I was a college football player, and that's the first exposure we all kind of get for the most part is college football training or any type of American football style training. And I from that, I pursued internships. And the year before, I went to the Baylor kind of NSCA, I believe it's like the Texas Regional Clinic, and met a couple people there. And was able to get a internship with them next summer in the summer of 2014. And I started with football, and 2 weeks into it, they said, "Yeah, basketball needs interns. You got to go over there. They still got anyone, and we got to give them a couple from our pool. And so you and this person are going to go over there." And I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
It was 2014. Baylor just won Big 12, and was in this weight room, this whole different environment. And to me, knowing what NAIA football is to Baylor football, just seeing that jump was really cool. And I was disappointed. And I got in this weight room, and that really changed my whole career path. I met Charlie Melton and Jeremy Hefner there, who were running the men and women, and I looked at them and I said, "Wait a minute, you only have 12 to 15 athletes on both sides, and you make a decent salary, and you travel around the country with them." I said, that's what I want to do.
Yep.
So it wasn't really about basketball to start, because there's so many nuances to just being around the guys, being around the women that you don't know until you're in it. And from that point on, it's been basketball, basketball, basketball. So I had a really great summer with Charlie and Jeremy, and they're still really important to me now. I talk to those guys as often as I can, not as often as I should, but um, that led me to go back to Northwestern for my 5th year of football after that summer. Then I was charged with training the men's basketball team at Northwestern College, just because that's kind of how our curriculum worked. We have a really great curriculum for strength conditioning coaches. Our practicum piece is really cool there at Northwestern, where you get assigned teams as you go. And I was kind of the first guinea pig of that process, was getting able to fully be able to program and design and train the athletes under the supervision of Coach Ox there at Northwestern. And so that was my first big exposure. And then looking forward, you think, well, what do I need to do next? Well, I got to get a GA, or I need to continue to find experience, keep working. And so that spring, I just started applying every single place I could. A lot of GAs. And then I thought, well, if I don't get a GA, I'm going to try to get an internship and keep working there. So a million internships, and I applied to every single thing. And I applied to Belmont University, and I knew if I knew one thing about Belmont is they have a pretty great basketball program. Obviously, like put on great players and win a bunch of games, and have a coach there that's been doing things for a long time. And so when Belmont came open, that was kind of my target of, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to have. And I got Belmont, or I got interviewed for Belmont, and I got accepted and got the master's program and all that. And then I got my sport assignments from Lee Rowland, the head coach. And he said, "Awesome, welcome to the team. You're going to train men's soccer, women's tennis, and the cheer squad." And at that point, it was obviously very grateful for the opportunity. I was like, awesome, this is great. I get to experience things I haven't really worked with. But my second email back to him was, "Thank you. I appreciate that. Very excited. Would I be able to assist you in training the men's and women's basketball team in my spare time?" I said, "Yeah, obviously, that'd be great." And so started at Belmont, trained those athletes that I was assigned, and then started kind of working my way into the men's and women's basketball side of things. And that's when I really thought that I could be impactful there, just because of my experience at Baylor and my desire to train basketball as a full time, and just being the one guy that did that. I was able to work in there with the staffs and be a big part of those programs. Or I was even traveling with the women's team to on the road. I was able to go to the NCAA tournament with them in my first year there. So yeah, just kind of wiggling my way into the basketball world. And then I thought, well, what's next? Got to get a job. And some things came open. Lamar University came open. I was halfway through my second year. It was a director of men's and women's basketball, as well as working with the baseball team. But there's two coaches. You're the second in command there. So I was also on the floor with every single team. So I got to Lamar in January after that year, and spent 3 months there. Uh, Side note, I skipped something. The years Belmont doesn't keep their athletes around in the summer.
Mm.
So between year one and year two, I was able to look for internships. I wasn't just going to work; I was going to find a way to get another internship, and that's when I worked for Daniel Roos at the University of Texas. In that summer between Belmont year one and year two, and obviously get really immersed in a staff that was really big on culture and training hard. And Roos, I know he's been on. He's just been such a phenomenal cornerstone for my career, and so working with him was really put in perspective what opportunities I could have if I put my mind to it and I worked hard enough. So leave Texas that summer, back to Belmont. One semester into Belmont, Lamar comes open. I apply to Lamar. I get Lamar. It's obviously it didn't pay a whole lot, by a whole lot, uh, sub $30,000, and I wavered on that decision for a little bit, thinking, "Oh, should I do this?" And looking back, that was so stupid. Obviously, you go do that,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the clear decision, because we're not in this thing to make $1 million or anything like that, but we're in there to train and grow and work with athletes. And took Lamar, and then 3 months into that, Texas needed an assistant strength coach, and I was one of Roos's calls for that job, and it was a 5-minute conversation. He said, "My guy's leaving. Do you want it?" I said, "Yep." He said, "Cool. Need you here this Sunday." And so it was Easter Sunday, a week and a half later. And I think my guy, Daniel Darcy does a tremendous job at Lamar University. I think he kind of saw that coming in terms of finding another opportunity in basketball specifically. And he helped me transition back to Texas in a really awesome way. And I really give him a lot of credit for giving me that first opportunity as a full-time strength coach. And he does a tremendous job and has built Lamar up so much from the time that I was there. I think we were operating with 2 full-time and 1 GA, and now he's got an army of people. He's got a dietitian. He just does a tremendous job. He's a really well-scheduled, regimented man that really has a focus and a path. So all the credit to him for that opportunity. But went back to Texas and spent 3 great years at Texas. Um, that experience there, you just get exposed to so much at the top level of college athletics in terms of technology, the actual basketball side of that, because you're no more training other teams while the basketball team's practicing. You're a men's basketball support staff member. You're not a performance coach solely. You're part of the staff, and the connections and relationships I made there are still with me today. And so just getting insight to like really what it takes to be at the highest level. And also at that point, there wasn't a whole lot of high major men's basketball only assistants. And so I really thought I had a really great front row seat to work for Daniel Roos and Shaka Smart. And then in my last year there, Andrea Hootie came from Kansas. I was able to work for her for about 6 months, 6 to 8 months before COVID shut everything down. From Texas, I got a job at East Tennessee State University, working for Jason Shea and his staff. And that was through a connection with the former guy at ETSU that was able to put me on there. Spent 10 months at ETSU. And then after that, Darren Horn, who was an associate head coach at Texas, was able to get the job at Northern Kentucky. And he is someone that I just really connected with in my time at Texas. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know the game that you had to play in terms of building relationships and, attaching yourself to high major assistants or anything like that. I wasn't trying to play any game, but we just developed naturally. And I thought that's a guy I'd like to work for someday. And so when he had an opportunity, I was able to join him at Northern Kentucky, where we just finished our 3rd season as a staff, his fifth season as a staff. And our staff is mainly comprised of a lot of guys that were working together at Texas in slightly lesser roles. And so, long story short of the career, like just making a couple connections and being a good person with people and being genuine just create a lot of opportunities for me to work hard and to kind of prove myself. And that put me in the position I am today.
I mean, I love the theme of connections within that, right? Because I think that's what's so important. And you never know what is the smallest thing that could kind of end up shifting you to your next position. Everything every coach is listening right now has experienced that. For myself, it was Ty Watson was the women's strength coach at Tennessee, and he and I never really helped him train women's basketball, but he'd come over and we talk a little mess to each other, and it was fun to kind of get to know him. And then when I was working with Greg Adamson, I never thought I was going to be with basketball. Same as you. I thought I was going to bide my time in Olympic sports until football position came open. And then I was going to be a rah rah guy because I can yell loud, and that's one of my talents. And then all of a sudden the Texas Tech women's job opens up, and Ty was crucial to be a recommendation for me. So those things always kind of change the path of your career. But now, if I were to, people ask me actually a pretty significant amount, would I ever want to do football or would I ever want to change sports? Is I can imagine doing a single other sport than basketball because I've grown to love it because of the things that you mentioned that kind of opened your eyes to it initially. So the connections piece is just so valuable behind it, and these small things that you think, you know, it's a bummer to not be able to intern with Baylor football, but all of a sudden they completely changed your path in training and conditioning. Like those things I feel like can't be overstated, really.
For sure. Yeah, I think just just being present where you are and not trying to play a game really kind of helped me play the game a little bit in terms of just meeting people and building genuine connections. And obviously we can look back and say, oh, I should have done X, Y, Z with these people, but that just it wasn't in my plan at that point. It wasn't what I was gearing towards. It was just more like I'm going to show up and work as hard as I can and be great to the people around me, and that yielded some results that ultimately got me where I'm at. You can look and say, oh, I should have done this, this, and this. Well, it's actually the work you already did to get you where you're at, and just being really thankful. I think one piece as coaches we overlook, because I think it's just the nature of the business, and I think it's the nature of the world really is, well, why don't I have that? Why am I not there? All that stuff. We all used to dream about the exact spots we're in. Like every single one of us, oh, if I could just do this, if I could just be here. And kind of sitting in that sometimes just really makes you appreciate everything you've done to be where you're at. And we all chose this field. We all knew exactly what we were getting into. Like I said, I had a real conversation with that advisor when I was 20, like all the kind of bad things, air quotes, about the profession and what it takes to make it. And we all chose to do it. So I think it's really important for all of us, whether we want to move on to other jobs, whether we want to change sports, whether we want to have less sports or more money or more technology, just kind of appreciating what we have, and I think possessing some humility and kind of dropping our ego at the door a little bit is the nature of our jobs, in my opinion. It's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be support staff members, and I'm all for the profession moving towards higher salaries and more recognition and more importance. But I don't want us to lose that piece of, like, we serve at the pleasure of our athletes. And in the basketball world, I truly feel that we serve, at the privilege of our head coach. Our head coach chose us to do these things, and our head coach entrusts us with a lot of responsibility with their teams. And so I think just having that sense of pride and the trust that we get to be impactful, we get the platforms we're at, we get to be around these athletes, is something we should never forget as performance coaches.
Well, I mean, it's crucial to what we do, because I think back to conversations where in the moment, might have been something where, okay, my first ever time I was late at UPenn, right? And coach just basically told me, in a little bit harsher words, that's not going to fly, you know? And so but that again changed exactly how I operate. To this day, I hate being late. I hate when people are late because of that conversation, but because again, it helped me to a higher standard. And so, exactly what you said, you know, I didn't get into coaching because I thought, okay, I'm going to go make $1 million like some of these football strength coaches. It was cool to kind of imagine it, but as soon as I chose basketball too, I knew that wasn't necessarily going to be the case. There's those salaries aren't out there for basketball. But at the
Right.
same time, I did it because I wanted to actually be able to help influence people. And it's cool when you have athletes come back, a couple years later, or they'll text you and they'll remember a conversation you may not have even remembered that you had. But it's a lesson that they've taken and they've learned, and they're going to apply to the future. So I agree 100%. I think you do need to appreciate it because at the end of the day, you do have the opportunity to actually be influential in somebody's life and make a difference for the better.
For sure. And I think just impacts that we can have daily, I think we miss sometimes. We have them all the time. I think we're more impactful than, kind of like you're saying. But, you know, I've gotten Father's Day texts from guys.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like,
Yeah.
and it makes you just sit back and think, like, man, what I'm doing even though it's part of the job, really holds some value to these kids and to the universities that we work for, and really just the entire program. Is, we spend a lot more time with these guys than their families do. Guys coming from unique backgrounds, we're different family things or all that stuff. Like we become, for better or worse, a part of their family, and it's always striving to be the better part of that. And I think that's just goes into our responsibility of as men leading men, or men leading women, or women leading women, or in any role you have. I think it's doubling down on who you are as a person, and having integrity, and knowing who you can impact the most, and striving to do that every day.
And then, but being that type of person also drives those connections that you talk about. Your
For
name
sure.
always carries weight. I've always heard extremely positive things about you, right? And there's coaches out there whose names come around, and those people may not be on the positive end of the karma side of things, right? And I've heard not necessarily great things because of their daily interactions that they have with people as well too. So those things massively influence who you are and your reputation as a coach.
For sure. Yeah, and that's one thing. Just talking to people is I just want to be known as a good person
Yeah.
more than a great coach. Like, I think we all do the same job a million different ways, and of course I have fallen short on that many a times of not being as good of a person I should have, or letting ego or pride or change get in the way of that. And you can look back and regret on that, or you can look back and say, yeah, made some mistakes with X, Y, Z, and just kind of want to move forward and be the best you can. Because, like, I've done a couple talks, like presentations, and like, before I go into training, I say, rule number one, be a good person. Okay? Because nothing else you do really truly affects it. Like nothing, no training periodization model, no technology, no equipment, no nutrition station is really going to affect the performance of your guys, or your women, or whatever athletes you have, if you're not leading with some type of integrity, and there's a level of trust there. And on that note, I think if you're authentically you, and who you are authentically is a good person that's looking out for the best for people, you gain so much trust in the training process. I'm in year 3 here, or going into year 4 really, in Northern Kentucky, and I'm sitting back here in the spring training these guys, and we have a lot of older guys, and now we're going to keep getting older guys the way the world's working, where we're looking at transfers and things like that. It's like, I don't have to tell these guys to be on time. I don't have to tell these guys what to wear. I don't have to tell these guys XYZ cues. I don't have to overcoach, or really coach a whole lot techniques based things or character based things, just because they're bought in, and for no other reason than that's just what they do when they see me. Is they do what they're asked. They're grateful for it. I'm grateful for them, and it's a really it's a really big period of growth for me right now in training. Is having It's the longest place I've ever been in terms of being in charge of the main function. So seeing that growth's been really cool. It's brought me a tremendous amount of value, and maybe things outside, or things professionally in terms of aspirations, aren't going on the path you exactly want. Like, we still get to go in and do our jobs every single day at a high level. And there's also the way the world is, with the way head coaches move around now. There's a lot of men and women in the field that are finding themselves without that opportunity this spring, and they're looking for the next opportunity. And so just realizing we get to do what we do, and everything matters. Everything we do matters with these people that we're working with, whether it's staff or support staff, or the volleyball team when they're leaving the weight room, when the basketball team's coming in. Like, those interactions really matter, and it speaks to a lot about who we are as a program, and who I try to be as a coach.
So let me ask you this: how do you keep that in the forefront of your mind? Because I think a lot of coaches know this, right? And it's something that they strive for every day. But there's days certainly where I get caught up in even the monotony of, okay, it's February. We've already scouted this team before. I'm just tired. I kind of just want to get out of here. We know that's part of coaching, but how do you personally kind of keep those things in the forefront of your mind?
Sure. I think people that know me know I'm a high anxiety individual. So I think just I have a couple personal traits that help me along with that too. Um, and I say that, I say that's our goal, and that's the forefront, and it is, but I fail on that all the time.
Mm.
So I don't want to make it seem like that's who I am every single day. It's who I strive to be every single day. I think that's what's really important, is striving to be that person every day, and just really, like it was talked about earlier, is knowing what your job is. knowing that your job is not to be a well-liked, verified strength coach on the internet. That's not our job. That's a really cool perk that a lot of people are finding a lot of success in that we all really want. Like, because that's awesome for us as a personal goal, as a personal achievement. But it's just reminding yourself of what the job is.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard. That's hard for a lot of people. Um, and I think it's being present. It's listening. It's when the clock strikes noon or whenever you're training, that's their time. It's not your time. It's their time to be with you. And it's not about you. It's about the kids. It's about the program. It's about the university. And the kids, the program, and the university owe you nothing
Mm.
at the end of the day. We work for them. That's our jobs that we chose to do. And so I think just remembering what the job truly is kind of being a servant leader. There's times based on seasons, I am that rah rah guy. I am the get in the face guy. I am the challenge your character, challenge our standard kind of guy. But I think ultimately it's about showing up every single day with some consistency, letting your personal highs and personal lows and leaving that at the door when you walk in to train. When a guy texts you on a day that you're off and you don't feel like going in to lift, it's yes, I'll be there. It's being the guy that always says yes. And that's my personal philosophy. I know that's not a lot of, I think I abandon a lot of personal boundaries sometimes professionally to just be the guy that's there all the time. That's in my personal life. I'm the same way as I try to be the one that's always there, the one that's really consistent. And I think it's helped me a lot professionally is just to always say yes to a lot of things and be open to a lot of things. And there's times I failed at that tremendously, but I've learned like every little or small contact you get with your team, with your staff, administration, all that stuff really matters, and you're serving when you have those interactions.
Well, do you feel like, because I've tried to take the same approach. I try to say yes as much as possible, but we all know the cost of that side too. Do you feel like that kind of takes a toll on you personally?
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I think yeah, absolutely. And I don't wear that like a badge of honor. I don't think that's a good thing. I'm not advocating for sacrifice beyond what you're willing to do as a person. I'm not advocating for that at all.
Mm.
I'm well aware of the cost it has on me and relationships and family and all those things. But I think that's the battle. I think that's what really being a coach is riding that line as close as possible and knowing your limitations. Knowing when you go over your limitations, what you're going to need to get back from that. Knowing you just need a chill night. Knowing you just need to get away for a little bit. Knowing you just need to call someone else in the profession. And I think that's another thing that there's so many. I try to be a really good person. You're saying you try to be a really good person. I think all of us, 99% of the people in the field, are trying to be a really good person every single day. I think we all got on this thing to serve a little bit. We all got on this thing to impact in an unselfish way. And so reaching out to the people you've worked with, the people you've worked for, like, and just asking for advice and saying, hey, struggling with this right now. I know you've gone through it. How do you do it? And sometimes they say, you just keep going,
Yeah.
right? I think this field is a war of attrition in a way. I'm not going to call it a grind because, like I said, we chose to be here. We chose to do this, and we chose these long hours and all that stuff. And I love the long hours. I love the air quotes grind. Grind means it's a negative thing, and it's not. It's a blessing to get to do what we do. So I think that balance of knowing what you can do and training that muscle of what you can do. You don't get better at extending yourself a little bit unless you practice extending yourself a little bit. There's some personal boundaries that you can make about time or hours. And I think when I have a family or when I have, you know, something more close to me in my apartment that I'm in right now in terms of need, um, that will change. And I've lived with someone before, a girlfriend, and I could tell how that changed. I could tell how, wow, this is new for me, is I need to make a priority at home to be there, to drop some stuff at the door a little bit there and kind of show up for what I need to be there. And I've failed at that. I've succeeded at that. I've had highs and lows in that, but I think it's just knowing who you are, what your kind of role is in each relationship in your life, and coming to serve people.
I love that concept of training the muscle, right? That you just mentioned. I think that's so key because it makes me think back to my first couple years with my fiance, right? Of trying to do everything that you mentioned and trying to be there and say yes for every single thing, but then also trying to do the exact same thing for her. And
Right.
she, it was so interesting for me because when you say train the muscle, it makes me think that she's trained it as well too, because there's certain things that
Right.
we have just accepted, and there's certain things that I've seen her get better with handling. Like from a standpoint of next Friday, I'm going to go down to Wichita Falls and do the starting strength seminar and hopefully get my starting strength certification. So I told her this week, hey, I know off season is the time where I actually get to be home by 5:30, 6 o'clock. I'm staying late for these next 2 weeks so I can really study and get these things done. And I think if that was something first year, I would have thought all day about that conversation and worried way too much about it. And then she would not have had a great response either, And so
Right.
ultimately for, anybody who's a younger coach who's listening, or we're still younger coaches as well,
Yeah,
but the ability to kind of adapt and then things do get easier as you progress along. And yes, it does take a personal toll, but there is also a balance that can be found.
for sure. And on that note, when we're younger, like I said, I like to think we're still young.
Yeah.
I think we all think we're still young, but when you're younger doing those internships, there truly is no, you don't set any personal boundaries. You're doing every single thing because that's the nature of the field, in my opinion, is you want to be available all the time, and you are available all the time, and that's part of the job. And I think if we both resigned to go sell insurance today, there would be 100 men and women crawling to take our
Yep.
positions if they said if you can get there, because that's right, wrong, and different. That's how it is. And so for those younger coaches, listening to that, I think go all in, be who you are, but also know what you want in life outside of training, know what you want in life outside of your profession, and start to develop an idea of how that looks to you, where you can accomplish everything you want. It's not about, I used to think like, oh, there's no way I could be a husband and a father doing this. There's no way I couldn't. And when I was an intern thinking that, I was right. At that pace, I couldn't,
Yep.
and so it's starting to think a little down the line of, well, what's going to fulfill me outside of here? What's going to make sure that I can be the best for my athletes? Because if your personal life's crap, your professional life's going to be crap. If you're extending yourself in one area, it's going to reach over to the other. If you're unfulfilled in another, it's going to reach over the other. And so, younger coaches listening, like keep doing what you're doing, but also really have an idea of what you truly want. Because this is a vast network of coaches. There's a lot of good people. I think we are ultimately in charge of our own future, of what we want, how we operate. Um, we all could find ourselves out of a job tomorrow based on the various circumstances. And so being able to have some kind of personal grit around what you want in your life and to protect that, I think is really important to develop at a young age, and know what you're willing to sacrifice. Know what your limits are, and that'll change as you get older, and you'll move that goalpost either closer or farther. But establishing that there is something outside of here that you need to be good for, that you need to have, that you need to be fulfilled, that you're working towards also. I would love to be, the director of the largest school in the university, win a championship every year. But I also know I want to share that with family and friends, and have a good life outside of here, and to ultimately be fulfilled in this life. And so making sure that you're just conscious of that. You can be all in, you can do all that, but know like, I really need to start thinking about what this looks like with a girlfriend, a boyfriend, a dog, or anything like, there's things like that where you just don't think of until it appears to be too late. And it's never too late to do that stuff, but you kind of get caught up in the rat race and like, where these last 3 years go? What have I done outside of here? And you start thinking, um, what life could look like. And I think that's why you see, especially post COVID, I think a lot of people just kind of moving on from the profession and just realizing after spending, 10 months at home locked inside, either with themselves or with their family, and they want change. They want to have a little more outside of that, because what we love was taken away from us in terms of professionally being able to interact with student athletes. And it's just important to keep that in mind.
Well, the idea of having a goal and of something that you want to get to, I think, is the most crucial point because it can feel kind of aimless. I mean, even somebody today asked me, what is your goal? Do you want to be, at a Kansas basketball strength and conditioning? It's like, yeah, that'd be cool. I could also see myself, being an Olympic director. I could also, go to high school. I could, quit tomorrow and become an Instagram influencer and try to do that. Like, those things are all open, and it reminds me of a conversation I had even just a couple days ago about my honeymoon. We were talking about where we want to go for our honeymoon, and there's another coach on staff who's engaged, and he brought up where he wants to go, and they had a set plan and everything. And in the conversation, he said, "Well," I said, we're struggling. I don't really know where we want to go." And he said, "Well, what are your options? What have you looked at?" And I was like, "Well, it's the entire world." And he goes, "No, no, you have to narrow it down. Like you have to see what do you want, what is going to fit to make this work, and then that's where you can kind of look at your options from there." And so I haven't made the connection obviously till now that you brought it up, but from a standpoint of coaching, if you can understand what your end goal truly is, then it makes it a lot easier for you to actually follow that path. Or on the hard days, keep in mind the things that we want to do. And so, I mean, I've got some reevaluating to do after this podcast, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's our job is planning, right? Is moving the needle every day to get to a goal, whether it's winning games or coming back from an injury or just the root of our profession of getting stronger. I believe that you need a plan,
Yep.
and sometimes I've been too rigid on that, in terms of the plan. And I'm not saying I write my programs out in a year in advance or anything like that. I probably should do that a little more often in terms of writing programs out, but you got to know where you're going. You got to know what you want, and you got to be okay with change. I think we all, the school, the profession as a whole has its own set of standards that you have to adapt to and you have to be willing to change with. And um, yeah, just kind of being okay with change, but also knowing what you want ultimately, and that drives that day to day motivation.
It's so interesting to me because this is something I've struggled with lately, especially, uh, you know, we're at mid-major schools. We're at spots where our players are going to get poached, and they're going to have an opportunity to make a lot of money at different schools. And you just talked about setting your standards on other players and being willing to accept change. And I've really struggled with this. We had a lot of people go to the transfer portal because they had a great opportunity elsewhere, or they want to look at their opportunities elsewhere. Um, and it was hard for me to accept it because one, I love these guys, right? I was excited for another summer with them to train them, but then also because I had the standards of loyalty or whatever you want to call it. How have you kind of approached that with the transfer portal or guys, kind of the changing landscape of basketball as a whole? Have you been able to accept that change?
Yeah, I think it's so different to what level you're at, what success you've had, types of players you get. Here we've done a good job of creating an environment with pretty upfront way things are going to operate. How we're going to practice, how we're going to coach, how we're going to talk to you, how we're going to communicate. And I think when you do that, you've done all you can in terms of like players transferring or moving on or wanting to go, where it kind of takes care of itself here, in a way of they know what we expect, we know what they're capable of, and they either move on or they stay because of that. Our biggest recruits every year are the guys that we want to keep.
Yep.
Like we're recruiting. Obviously everyone's recruiting a lot right now. We're bringing guys on campus, and all those things, but your biggest recruits is retaining your current guys that you want to keep around. And if you're trying to do that in the spring, it's already a little too late if you haven't done those things. And so just keeping that in mind is that we're constantly recruiting these guys. We're all salesmen and saleswomen in this field. Like we're trying to sell ourselves and sell our program as the place to be, the place that's going to get you better, the place that's going to hold you to an appropriate standard so they can accomplish their goals. I think we often think that once the season starts that we can just go right into it. Like we just start off season training. And that period of time has changed so much over my career because typically you start that off season, you come in guns a-blazing, like,
Yeah.
hey, this is the standard, this is what you got to do, and and you bring a lot of energy to that. That's a little aggressive, and in a positive way, of course. But I think as I've gotten through this and the way that the portal works, like that portal's still open. You know, like the guys can make up their minds to leave tomorrow. And so this spring has been more about just reestablishing those relationships, reestablishing that connection, and already working towards one the next season and our success, but working towards retention and adding value and adding impact to the guys that are here on campus with us now, because it's already starting. Their minds on the next season, and with obviously you get on Twitter or X now and you see every kid has 50 schools on his list or things like that, and your guys are seeing that, your women are seeing that, that there is this illusion of the grass is greener. And so really just watering the grass you're on right now and taking care of your own lawn and having faith in what you're doing is right. And I think it goes back to just being good people, just making sure that you're authentic, and the guys here know what they're going to get, and they know who I am. They know who our staff is. We have amazing staff continuity over the years. It's been the same core group of assistant coaches and head coach over the last really 5 seasons here with these guys, and that's really comforting. And so providing comfort and continuity while also letting them know they're going to get better here. I think that's how we tackle, and it's just making sure that their success through the team's success, right? Because you're winning games and winning championships and going to March Madness and winning a game there and all that stuff adds value to the program, but also add value to them.
Mm. I think those things are key, and I think it's very hard to kind of keep those in mind in season, right? Those tough times where you're not even thinking about the transfer portal or spring training. You're thinking about just playing the next game, or how's our team
For
going to
sure.
shake out this year when it's, our team started 1-2, our men's side, so it was like, oh my goodness, how is this year even going to go? And I wasn't even keeping in mind, the potential that we could have the success that we did, and then how would that actually look for our team afterwards? But I think it's, for me personally, it was tough, man. Like I was blue. It was probably like the saddest week I've had as a strength coach, because there were some guys who I think understood that they probably had a better opportunity at a high major school, and it sucked because I mean one of them even came up to me and he was like, "I've officially entered my name in the transfer." I was like, "Dude, I know you. Like like we talk on a daily basis. Like you don't got to tell me this in the PR voice. Like we can just have a conversation and I understand it, but." When everybody it did end up taking their opportunity, it was I don't know. I struggled. I was depressed for a week, because you build these relationships, you try to lead as a servant leader, and it was tough to see, even if their situations made sense or what they were doing made sense. It was hard for me. I think that's probably been the toughest transition I've seen so far.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to the have a plan, but be okay with the changes.
Yeah,
And also getting excitement of you're going to get more guys in to work with and impact. And like I get excited with recruiting. The staff uses me in a really positive way to kind of show what we do from the physical performance side and the recruiting process. So I get to know their recruits really well, and all the dinners, talking to their families, all those things. And so that to me is really exciting too. Now that's exciting if you have a good core,
yeah,
and if you have a good core, right, and you've been successful, and the potential that you're going to have for that. But I think it's all about those relationships, and it's all about making sure that these guys know that I tell all these guys, whether they're here for a year or they're here for 5 or 6 now, some guys on 8 years in college, however long they're with me, they get me for life. Like I'm got a lot of guys in Europe that I still talk to that are playing now. We got a lot of guys that are, not a lot, but the handful of guys that have gone on to be drafted from my time at Texas that I'm still just close with, that I can hit up when they're in Indianapolis and be able to go watch them play and hang out and talk to them. I had a guy that left 2 years ago into the transfer portal, found himself in the transfer portal again, and reached out to me for training. And first, my thought is absolutely, this is a little unique and different, but also
Yeah.
like absolutely I'll help you because I told you I would and I want to, and so just being able to have that relationship where there's trust involved. And if obviously there's times where guys leave on bad terms or unique terms that kind of that are fragile, but more often than not, like if you're with me for a month or a year or 4 years, 5 years, I want to make sure that they have me in their life for the rest of their career and beyond their career as a basketball player, but as a father and as a parent, as a husband, and all those things. So I think just being true to these people and making sure that you got their back no matter what, it is really important to me.
I mean, I think that's what makes the relationship so fulfilling, is because you do know it is still a lifelong relationship. And not to say any of those guys who did leave, I'm never going to answer their text or anything. That's not the case at all, because I understand what
Right.
happened, and I still have a deep care and a deep love for those guys. It was just kind of tough. I don't know. Maybe it's how parents feel when their kids go off to college or something.
Yeah.
Something similar, but no, I tell the exact same thing to our recruits as well. It's a lifetime deal, and that's what's so interesting about strength and conditioning as well. Is fitness is forever for everybody. It's
Right.
something that you have to do for the rest of your life. So I think in my mind, a strength coach should be the one who's there forever and should be there for the rest of your life, because ultimately it's something that's going to help you live a longer and better quality life.
For sure.
Basketball is always going to stop. No matter, you can have the best career of all time, it's always going to end at some point. But
Yeah.
being active and being fit is never really going to end.
For sure.
No.
For sure.
Well, Tyler, man, I could go all day. I mean, seriously, I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. But I don't want to run on too long and take too much of your time, but I've really enjoyed it. If anybody is listening and does want to reach out to you or wanted to contact you or follow you on social media, what would be the best way to do that?
Sure. Yeah. I think my Instagram is just at Tyler Janota underscore. And also anyone can have my number if anyone reaches out to you directly or anything like that. You have my contact information. It's something we all need to do a better job of, just talking to everybody, and would love to see people. I'm going to be at CSCCA in Fort Worth and also the High Performance Basketball Symposium down in Orlando in May. So
Awesome.
yeah, reach out to me any way you can.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you, Tyler. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you.
All right.